Okay, so this is going to be a test of the... Alright, welcome. This is going to be a test of the live streaming of Renegade Geopolitical. Now what I thought I'd do is run through a bit of an overview of the content that I've created and why I really believe this is, the best thing since sliced bread. I feel that I've done a really good job of it, and I'm willing to share it now. Very excited. And firstly, I want to apologise to people who have kept in the dark about the development of what I've done. It's going to be fairly self-explanatory why I've kept it in the dark as we proceed. So, first things first, I'm going to show off using paint.net. I've created a file that has pretty much amalgamated all the different aspects that I want to show off for this. I created an island that's not in the world of Ralstead, but using pretty much all the different rules and things. It's an offline version. I created as an island, a single province map, for the purposes of doing a tournament and playtest of what I've created. So, so I've created that, and we were going to be doing it live, as in face-to-face at the pub, doing it as a card game system. I experimented with printing out the province map onto plain paper in colour. I experimented with making up a two-part mixture of craft paint and craft glue, and then painting that onto the printout copy for the purposes of revealing territory, as in the fog of war that you conventionally have in many computer games. I wanted to try and recreate that in a live environment. So managed to work out with the two-part mixture to make like a scratchy surface that you would find with a Tats scratchy. And I managed to reveal territory without actually taking away the actual print surface, which is really good. So that was one way of doing it. The other way I've experimented with was to use aerosol chalk. And by spraying aerosol chalk onto a laminated map, I found that you can reveal territory with that as well. Either of those two methods are messy. However, it seems like the scratchy method is the least messy. With the chalk one, you end up having chalk on yourself, and you're going to have a chalk residue left on it once you've revealed territory. So when COVID struck again and we had to go into isolation, that's why I decided that doing it as a live stream and simply processing the geopolitical moves that are submitted and processing them live will show people what I'm trying to achieve. So before we get into that, what I'm going to do is just take you through a few of the bits and pieces. Now, the way that I navigate with paint.net, it may get confusing for some people, and it may make people a bit sick, but we'll give it a go. I have to switch off certain layers in order to do this, so there may be some times where I'm staring into the distance and clicking buttons without explaining. I'm pretty good with multitasking, but it's really important that people just maybe have a little bit of just a little bit of patience with me as I progress through. So I'm just going to click off the cover, and I'm going to reveal the island map. Now I'm going to zoom in on it, and then hopefully what you'll see is a little bit more detail. So what you can see in this map at the moment, and I'm going to move my mouse around as I describe what's going on. So with most of these single province maps, I have a jigsaw puzzle grid, and this layer is basically over the top of the map. Now the reason for that is that originally I had the idea of the maps being an in-character prop, and that by zooming in on a specific jigsaw puzzle piece, and then printing out this in this shape, and then in order to sort of foster cooperation between different player characters, for example, that they might have a map here and then their comrade might have one of these, but they might want to get find a third party who has this map here, and also this one here. They could assemble it into this kind of shape. So the original idea was that people would have these maps as props, and that still stands in a live roleplay environment. It still stands. Now, for some reason, I just realised that the layer with the towns on it hasn't been revealed, so I'll just reveal that now. So the towns, with this tournament, I'm starting it with the towns and the farms being the only starting position. So there's different designs for the fortifications that I've created in this. So to represent the different imperial styles of this world. So you'll find this kind of shape and pattern passed on even with the small ones. Now, I've also made it so that each of these pixels is, the scale of the map I should talk about. The scale of the map is that each one of these pixels is effectively 10 foot square. Now, yes, I'm using imperial measurements. That's a totally different thing. The main thing is that, yes, it gets pixelized on these ones here, but for the purposes of demonstrating how the game works, when it comes to the geopolitical, it doesn't need to be perfect. You can see that when it comes down to, say, this is a farm, you can see how, yes, I've made it so that the appearance of this is a lot tighter. So the quality of that is good enough for geopolitical. So the way that I've worked it out is that the fog of war layer will be over the top of the areas that are farmed or mined or harvested for resources. This is not a simulator of that kind of game. This is pretty much just to back up the live role playing with content and with drive and purpose. The thing is that the investment for a geopolitical power to go and investigate what's on, I don't know, this island here, it may be that they send small units of adventurers on that kind of thing, rather than investing in 20 individuals in a geopolitical, that they send 5 to go and inspect that island. The reasons for people allocating resources to geopolitical is loot, and also taking back territory from the undead. So the purpose is to go into these territories with a group of adventurers in the number of 20. For the geopolitical, it won't be possible to send groups of 5 or 10 or 15. It has to be a group of 20 so that it remains manageable, and that there's not huge numbers of casualties. Most of the encounters and things like that with creatures will, if we don't have the like 20 individuals, then there's a greater chance that there'll be huge numbers of casualties, and it's not very conducive to the longevity of the campaign. So I'm rambling, and I recognise that. So yeah, moving on. I'm going to put okay, there's a few things that I can't work out what I can show you and can't show you. I can try. So first things first, we've got the map revealed. We've got these lines. These are consecrated tracks where the undead can't come into. So people can freely pass along those without worrying about that. Each of these farms, I'm making it so that at the start of the tournament map, instead of there being barons, they'll be lords. So there'll be a lord of this town here, and they will also have control in terms of tax income from people who live on farms of the same imperial style. So I will reveal that now so that you can see what I mean. So we've got town info, we've got farm info. Okay, now this gets a bit messy and cluttered, but we'll give it a go. So what I've got up here in the top left hand corner and down here in the bottom left hand corner, etc., that is the brief on this town, following this line to this town. Now over here we've got the set of cards here that are representing the farms that are in this particular faction. Now I'll zoom in on the map and show off these things. So the first thing is the town of Lobenia is this town that is over here. Now in this town, these people live in this town. So what I've done is I've made it so that all the people who live in a town are grouped into groups of 5 to make up an adventuring party. Each of the groups of 5 have their own skills represented on the left, and they also have a 2-part alias. Now, aliases in the Renegade system is based off the Bellini Peace Accords and the Civil War. And after the Civil War, people have effectively changed the way that they talk to each other and talk about each other. They no longer use their real name. During the Civil War, they were forced to use aliases to protect their family and friends from the invading forces. And so after the war, they've basically continued with it. So it's a cultural change in the earldom of Bellini. So all the local people in Bellini are using aliases instead of their real names. It's going to be throughout the game that this will be present. So their real names won't be mentioned. It will be their aliases. The local people are quite proud of their aliases and what they represent, and that's something that will not change. It's a cultural part of the game world. Now, what I've done also with the way I've laid it out is that there are the 4 imperial styles, and so I've got a colour to represent, say, the Chakropop imperial style. That's the shape of the fortification. Now I've got all the NPCs who live in the province in groups of 5, as I said, and the colour is the colour of what their allegiance is, or how they feel. Like it's a political distinction. So while they remain loyal to the Chakropop imperial claims, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to be puppets of a Chakropop baron. So if there's a baron who has people in their province, yes, there's a greater chance that they're going to have less problems with people of the same faction, but they're not simply puppets. They have their own agenda as well. Now, the other thing is that the first skill that's on the card, it's only their primary skill, the one that they're known for amongst their friends, family, and more importantly to the Baron. So the idea that I have is that a lot of them have secret hidden pasts. They don't want to, they don't want to advertise what they did during the war. Some of them have done good things, bad things. They're trying to move on. But there'll be a slow reveal of additional information. So the card system that I've got here, what I'm looking at is every year there'll be more information revealed about these characters, is in officially. When it comes to a live roleplay environment, if any of these NPCs are tapped for an LRP mission, then the person who plays that role will have additional information, but it will be strictly need-to-know basis, and it's not to be shared. It's inside knowledge, and it will be slowly revealed over time. I've also got serial numbers for pretty much everything in what I've created. So there are serial numbers for a location. There are serial numbers for parties. And the purpose is that rather than having confusion about, what we're talking about when somebody's describing a party, then they can describe it in terms of the party number. So that when it comes to record keeping and moving forces around and tapping them, as in hiring them as mercenaries, or using them for militia duties or guild duties, or if the high priest is wanting to take some followers and do a geopolitical move, then they'll be referred to from their actual serial number. So in this town, there are these groups. So there's there are 60 to start with. Now the fact is that this town has a lot more space, a lot more room than just for 60 people. So during the time between the rebuilding that happened after the War of the Gods, 1,000 years previously, till now, it's been a backwater, and these fortifications have been kind of rebuilt by the people who remained. And you now have people, living in relative. They're living beyond their means. They're living in towers. They're living in places that used to be occupied by rich merchants or those, or their more affluent people. And the fortifications have been converted over into personal dwellings because there hasn't been the need for these fortifications to be active as a fortification. So what I've done is I've made it so that there is the maximum population here, which is very important when it comes to settling people into a town or a village or a hamlet or a farm. The idea is that for the purposes of a victory condition for a baron when they're conquering territory, taking it back from the undead, that they will find ruins, and then they will have to rebuild the ruins and make it so that these ruins are habitable. For example, I've made this one here as a rough kind of card to represent if you found a town in a ruined state. Now, the idea is that you would have to rebuild structures, walls, most importantly, to prevent some of the disasters from occurring. If you draw, in the geopolitical sense, if you draw a famine card, then if you have a granary that's in good condition, then there's no reason for any of your population to have to flee to better conditions. If you have a fully functional crypt, then it means that all the undead that are, once they have been smashed down and their remains have been taken, they can be put into a crypt in good condition, and that will prevent desecration disaster card from having an effect. We have a cistern card to prevent drought, and we have a sewer one to prevent plague. So when someone takes back an undead infested ruin and they want to populate it, well, of course they can simply rebuild some of the structures throughout the town. But the problem is that unless they follow it up with reconstruction of the granary, crypt, cistern, and sewer, they can't adequately protect the population from those kind of things. One thing I just realised is that this list doesn't include fortification, and I need to put in a fortification requirement, because there is a disaster card which is a raid. So it may be that unless they repair the fortifications, then they are it's possible that they can be raided by. Well, initially it's not going to be possible for players to raid each other. I'm wanting to make it so that this is a cooperative campaign to start with. But anyway, I'm rambling. So as you can see, there are 60 people living in this town. Now, when I go over to one of these farms, you can see, similar to what was shown before, this is the fortified farm of Prage Choch. You might notice that there are some cultural names. I've sourced a lot of the names for areas from the regions that the mash culture is based on. Mash cultures are a combination of an imperial element combined with a kingdom element combined with an earldom element, and these mashes of culture need to include all three of those components in them, so that it blends cultures and makes it so that there's no clearly defined that it's a combination of real world cultures throughout history, but it's not just a direct rip-off. There are a lot of good things about using direct like taking the Mongols as a culture in a fantasy live roleplay game, or in a fantasy novel or movie or things like those. But it's kind of weak. It's two-dimensional. It doesn't necessarily aid you in creating unique content. So with Renegades, I've made it so that all these cultures throughout the world will be a mash of cultures and influenced by their constituent parts. So the Chakrapop Imperial style. Well, Chakrapop is from ancient Thailand, around the Cambodian area. So there was once an empire in that area. I'll go on to mashes and where the cultural aspects come from, and the mash will be in a different video. But main thing is that as it comes to the population of these places, for a farm, the population is only 10 individuals at the start of it, but the population could be up to 40. There are enough living spaces and dwellings to justify that kind of population. Now, what may have been shown down here is, going back to the cards, is things like modifiers. So when it comes to processing the geopolitical move, it will be the number of people in the geopolitical move, which is, as I said previously, 20. So that's a base of 20. And then the modifiers are based on things like whether there's individuals in the party that have rank. So artisan will give a +1 bonus, and so that means +2. So if, for example, we go back to this town here, and if we were to say take these 4 parties and assign them to a militia under the command of the Baron directly, then it would be 20 plus all of the modifiers. So that would be 36 base as their base strength, just by having that group of 20. Now the Baron themselves may have an additional perhaps +4 modifier. So it could be that their base is like 40. So that means if they come up against a creature that is 40 or less, then they're going to survive the encounter and succeed in overcoming that. If the combination is less than the creature's difficulty, then there'll be some nasty cards that they have to draw and process through to work out whether they survive or not, or whether they take casualties, or whether they have to do a fighting withdrawal and things like that. Anyway, I've made it so there are lines drawing from the cards to the actual location on this particular layer. Now, what else can we show you that is going to make sense? So anyway, I'm going to click on the hamlets and villages as well. So that, no, I'm not. I'm going to hide them. Sorry, that was a bad idea. So there are undead infested villages and hamlets. When it comes to the tournament island, the objective will be that the barons and geopolitical forces, they go forth and they try to take back territory, and there's the victory conditions of the most loot that they have, or the most title deeds that they have acquired, and whoever has the most wealth at the end of the game will be the victor and will be declared the Baron of this island. That doesn't mean that the lords of these towns will lose power. It just means that they will not be, they won't have sufficient resources to be declared the Baron. You might notice that around the outside of the map there are some little islands that have got fog of war on them. Now I'm going to I've decided that I'm going to include not only title deeds to, say for example, this town here, which is purely an in-character title. It only entitles an individual to to basically claim the rent from the people living in this town. It doesn't give any other powers out of character. But what I'm looking at is creating these islands as a fungible, independent, virtual territory. So in the game, what I've decided is that people can find title deeds to these in-character areas, which give them in-character benefits, and then there'll be title deed cards that are found for these fungible islands and fungible areas that are going to be outside the jurisdiction of lords or the Baron. So player characters could effectively find one of these cards, and then they could buy it, sell it, trade it amongst themselves for real money, while these in-character title deeds can't be transferred in that way. The only way to transfer that kind of title deed is through a licensee transfer. So that'll be covered in a totally different video. So that's the map that I was using for the island tournament. So that would be a matter of revealing the territory and slowly progressing that. Now, there's a few things I can also show off that I've decided that I'll I'll show off. Now, the world map, for example, is one thing that, well, first things first, the all the information that I'm talking about, a lot of it is going to be available on the website. So that is renegadelarp.com. So my intention is that that will be where information is firstly available to. Navigating live without a safety net is what I'm doing now. Trying not to reveal things that I don't want to reveal. Alright, so we've got... what can I show? Alright, the world map. Why is it that I can't see the world map? For some reason, the world map isn't here. So just bear with me while I quickly open up the world map. Okay, and then I select all and copy. And then I go back to it, and then I will paste the world map onto this. So the world map that I've created, it's basically that when I started this, it was very pixelated when I would zoom in, and when I stumbled upon using paint.net to create content, that was what led me to further exploration and learning how to use some of these tools. Now, what I realized was that when I zoomed in on Valini was the pixelization. Now, it's not as good as it is on another map, but you can kind of get a sense of these pixels, and each one of these pixels being like 9 square miles. Now, what I decided was I'm going to start the campaign with 4 baronies. Now, the baronies that what I've decided is the area that's going to be set in for at least the first 4 baronies is going to be in, well, I'm going to zoom back in, and it is in this little nook of the river. So it's not perfect, but that there is this area here. So the initial campaign will start with these provinces being the ones that are revealed, and I don't want to give too much away, so I'm going to get rid of that one. And then so what effectively is going to happen is that, just for the start, we're going to try the geopolitical game not live face to face, but to do it as a live stream. I know that I'm rambling, and I know that that's not what some people are here for. They want to maybe listen to something a bit more, a little bit more of higher standards of production value and things like that. But as I said, it's just the first shot, and if I basically try to script it and try to do all those things and try to watch what I say and how I say it, and it's just too much. So I'm going to do the best I can. I'm going to try to keep records of during the live stream. I mean, we're already up to 34 minutes, but what I can do is I can keep records, and I can basically make it like chapters. I can put in a description and say, oh, I started rambling about this particular aspect of it, and then at minute 15 and 30 seconds I started talking about this. So that's my responsibility, so I can make it so that people don't have to listen to me ramble for 2 hours or whatever. That they can just look at the contents of the live stream and then skip forward to that part of it. So anyway, there's little things that I want to show you so that you can see how there's the difference between the live role playing component and the geopolitical will be that I have to dumb it down a little bit. In the live environment, for example, if you found a fortified farm that was undead infested and you managed to rout the undead, that effectively what you'd be left with is a ruin. So this is a ruined farm, example of a ruined farm requiring rebuilding after being taken back from the undead. So what I've done is I've basically Swiss cheesed the fortification as such. So in order to rebuild it, you'd have to pretty much pay to get those holes filled in. It's time consuming to make them all different, and so I'm not. I'm going to just make the same ruin effect for every single farm of this particular style of building that's found. So in the live environment, finding this, that's all. That's a matter of submitting a move that's not part of the geopolitical and explaining what repairs are going to be done and allocating the resources to do that. Now, there's another thing as well, which is I've used Microsoft Excel to create a lot of this content. It's not perfect, it's not wonderful, especially when it comes to trying to do some of the graphical representations of things. But there are some really cool things that I've found that I've made it so that the scale of the map. So this one here is a 1 foot scale. So each one of these little blocks is 1 foot by 1 foot scale. So that is a 10 foot by 10 foot room. And I know, again, imperial measurements, blah, blah. But the other thing that I've found with Excel is that it enables me to do cool things like, I don't quite know how to remove that little red arrow in the corner of the cell, but that little arrow there, or that little corner that's redded out, that's a representation that there is a comment, a note in the cell. And for example, I held my mouse over the top of this one, and you can see what is revealed shows it. Look, there's been some changes. I've been developing this for a long time, and there are some things that are now no longer current or haven't been updated for years. But when I've been creating buildings and such, I have been copying and pasting these blocks, and that means that every block comes with a note that can be changed. They don't all have to be the same. That particular rock could be where the person who's got the title deed, who happens to live in this building once it's rebuilt, that could be a stone that is a trigger to reveal a trapdoor, and then there could be a vault underneath the building, and so that could actually say that it has that trigger. It could also be that there's information about a trap. It could be all sorts of information that's put in there. I did try to work out a costing. So silver pieces, I've made it so 1 silver piece equals the equivalent of Australian dollar. So to basically get that block of stone fitted in that location, I'm going to call that 200 silver pieces. So some people aren't going to like that. It's bloody expensive. But if they want to build a stone tower, then all they have to do is work out how many blocks they need and then pay that to a stonemason and things like that. one of the things I've done with the stonework is that not all stone is equal, and even if it's brand new stone, it's not going to always have the same number of hit points. So when I say hit points, I'm making it so that if you want to destroy a wall, you can destroy it. I want to make it so that none of these things are invulnerable. If someone wants to take time to smash that piece of stone, they can. Now, instead of just going and calling it an arbitrary 200 hit points for that piece of stone, what I've decided is that every piece of stone is going to have a RAM between, for example, in this case, between 10 and 200. So currently on this, this is just a screenshot view. But when I am creating a new barony and I'm creating new towns, villages, hamlets, and farms, it's going to use a lot of random selections of names and random selections of information. But once I've copied it and pasted it, then I can do another final thing, which is to select all of the document and then copy, and then I can paste values. Now, where it says RAM between 10 and 200, when I paste values only, it's going to do one final RAM between, and then it's going to come up with a number, and then that number will be in that cell. So anytime, so the difference between the geopolitical and the LARP is that if somebody wants to go and break into this, if this was rebuilt, so somebody found it, somebody rebuilt it, it's populated, and there just happens to be a master alchemist living in this particular building. Yeah, no, there's no doors at the moment, but I mean, I'm just putting this as rubble that's fallen that can be reused. If there is rubble absent, as in missing, then that needs to be replaced. So it means buying buying stone blocks and replacing. So so if there's a master alchemist living here and somebody wants to break into their tower and steal all their potions, well, they can do that in an LRP environment by finding somebody who's willing to put together the scenario and run the scenario for them, and they may have to pay that person to provide that content for them. But when that person is creating the content, they will need to refer to things like this map, and I'll be able to provide them with the hit points and any of the comments and things like this. So the inside knowledge and things like this is harder for even someone who provides content to know. They could basically say, yeah, no worries, I can do that for you. Then they get this map sent to them. And then they actually look at all the comments and they go, bloody hell, there's a lethal trap on this stone. So they know that if the adventurers who are wanting to break into this place, if they try to go through here, they're going to die. And that also means that because they're not the ones who are actually killing, they're just the messenger, and most people will be cool enough to not shoot the messenger. If the person who's put this structure here was a player character, their gloves are off. They can put lethal traps on whatever they want to because they're protecting their own stuff. So yeah, there's no recourse. It's so sad. Your character's dead. Create a new character. Which is, the other thing as well, that permadeath seems that a lot of people have, a lot of LARP groups have stopped using permadeath in their systems, or they never had the concept in the first place. What I'm wanting to do is create a system where there is a thriving economy, that there is loot to be had, and we're talking about like 10 million silver pieces worth of loot in a province. So when it comes to the test island, for example, has 10 million silver pieces worth of loot. So somewhere on here, that loot exists. So it might seem absolutely crazy to introduce 10 million silver pieces worth of loot into a live roleplay game, except for the fact that they're going to have to earn it. They're going to have to fight their way through. They're going to have to fight their way through undead, and they're going to have to fight their way through, all these challenges and survive them. Now, if I made it so that there was no permadeath, then there's going to be some very powerful, wealthy, pretty much indestructible characters in this game system. So by making it so that there is a finite number of hit points, and that there's no sort of get out of jail free card and simply go and sit it out for half an hour and come back in, it's going to hopefully mean that people pick their fights. They don't make enemies if they can help it. Hopefully it'll be a much more polite society, because people will know that they can lose everything. So all the character items, all the things that are personal loot, all the interactions, those things are all gone if their character dies. They have to create a new character. Now, if they're a licensee lord over, say, this town here, and their character dies, they lose all their personal loot from that character. All their group faction loot remains. They can create a new character, but then they have to effectively start over in terms of their relationship building with other people. Yes, they're representing being a lord, but their character is gone and all those interactions are gone. They have to start again with those. So they still retain their license as a lord, but the character will change and effectively be a brand new character. So a little bit more on permadeath and stuff like that later. It's a pretty basic sort of concept. There are just no training wheels, and if you die, then you die. So don't die. Don't put your character into a position where there's certain death, unless you can make it heroic. Some people, they get bored of their character. They may choose to do something heroically stupid, and that may be the exit point for that character. Sorry about that. Telemarketers. Anyways, where else are we? The other things I was going to show off are the characters. The characters. So what I've got in this is I've created people. There we go, people. So showing off the people. So with the tournament map, what I've got in the corner are the lords in their different factions. So this is the actual character card for the lord. Then each character in Renegades has comrades. These comrades aren't slaves. They're not employees. They're not... they are not just throwaways. Like all NPCs in the Renegade campaign, they're all three-dimensional. They may look two-dimensional when you first see them, but the more that they're activated, the more information that will be revealed. In a geopolitical sense, you don't find out much information. It's when they actually get activated in the live environment where the characters are going to truly shine. So the Lord plus the comrades, that makes up a group of a group of 5. So feasibly, that Lord could combine with 3 of their advisors. Now, the advisors are assigned by their faction, and they can basically be applied to... They're like a wild card. So if there's ever a group of 15 that you need an extra 5, if these advisors haven't been assigned, then they could be assigned to make up the number 20. So the Lord will have 30 days of service from every character who's in their faction in the province. So this is purely for the tournament rules. As I said, the town has 60 people in it, and then each of the farms has 10 people in it. So there's 3 farms plus the town, so there's 90 individuals living in the province. So so that means that just in militia alone, they've got they've got 90 people to tap. So then you've got the addition of an extra 10, 20, and then 25 if you look at using all of these combined with the militia. So there's quite a number of moves that a lord can make. Now I'm also making it so that there are many other geopolitical forces at play. Now they've got an ambassador with comrades. They've also got different factions that may be willing to assist them more than others. So there's a holdout card for each of the factions. Now I'm making it so that during the Civil War there are some that refuse to accept the Bellini peace accords, and they're effectively outlaw. But they exist, and in this case, the Lord can use them and effectively exploit them for their passionate for the fact that they won't accept the Bellini peace accords. So there's the 4 different faction lords and their holdouts and their ambassadors and their comrades. So and they've got some serious modifiers, as you can see. So these ones have got mastery, and so the mastery is a +2. So all those +2s add up to 8. Now I have used Excel to create these cards. I'm using Excel to generate the serial number. I'm also using Excel to calculate this number based off, look, there's hidden calculations, not now because it's in paint.net, but when it's in Excel, there are some hidden calculations that basically ask this cell, if it includes master, then to put a number. And then another one here that's comparing this one and putting a number. And then down here I've used a sum calculation to calculate all those, and then it creates the modifier. So again, Excel's pretty good with some of these things, and all I've got to do is, as I said, F9, then copy, then paste values only, and it's then fixed in stone. Now, as you can see, there's some issues with alignment that I need to change the font size or change the the way that the cell's put together. So, for example, that serial number could be further over to the right, so that then that would make more space for that should say Renegade Hero number. Anyway, what we've also got is guilds. So each of the skills in the Renegade LARP system has a guild grandmaster. So guild grandmasters are geopolitical players. They can, assign their own people. They can hire mercenaries. They can have their own agenda when it comes to geopolitical, and they can earn lots and lots of wealth from doing so. So what I've done is I've created a card for every single guild grandmaster, plus they've got their comrades, which makes up 5, and all they have to do then is either get in with another grandmaster and do a cooperative, and then they only have to find 10 mercenaries, or feasibly they could get together with 4 in a group of 4 grandmasters with their comrades, and there's some serious modifiers. So if they did get themselves together in a group, then they would be a force to be reckoned with on their own. So just I mean, look, some of the graphics are a pain in the neck. I mean, the thing is that I'm trying to use, as I said, Microsoft Excel to create and populate. So when it's populating the alias for the Hunters Guild Grandmaster, as you can see, Aquamarine is off the side. If I was to reduce the font size, then it wouldn't be as easily read. Look, I'll have to try to find some sort of compromise. Anyway, so when I've populated the card, this cell here is equal to this cell here, and so that's how I've populated the cards. Got the same kind of calculation thing going on each of these cards, and things like that. So that's the Guild Grandmasters. Then there are, up here we have, sorry about that. Okay, what we've got up here is the High Priests. So with regards to the High Priests, they are, they can be player characters, except for the High Priest of Hethnor. Now, Hethnor is the goddess of trade, and the way that the priests of trade have operated since the War of the Gods is progressively more and more like a corporation, as in not a nice fuzzy corporation, but one that basically exploits. So the people who, so anyone who plays this character, they can't be a player character. So we've got the 4 gods that are remaining after the War of the Gods. Now I've also created some mercenary groups. So there's Alpha Outlaw, Bravo Outlaw. Outlaws can have a price on their head. They basically do some nasty things that aren't allowed by player characters. Then you've got mercenaries over here that aren't outlaw. They can be hired for jobs. Just they're always available for sale. Now we've got the elementalists. Now I'm making it so that the elementalists are included. They're anti-gods. They're anti-worship of the gods. They believe in the gods, of course, but the thing is that the power of a priest to command elements to do their bidding, the difference between a shaman and a priest is that a priest commands the elemental to do its bidding, whereas a shaman begs and requests and will do things for the elemental to get the elemental to do its bidding. So it's just a fundamental, difference in approach, but also there's an element of worship as well, in that the shamans worship the elements. All 4 elements are opposed to each other, as in fighting each other and vying for political favors, and they don't play nicely amongst themselves. However, there are opposed elements. So air and earth are opposed, and fire and water are opposed. So they do sort of play off against each other and things like that. And then I think that's it for the actual characters. What else can I show you? I don't want to give too much away. So I'm going to put a black layer over the top of an encounter layer. I'm going to take away the town info, and then I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to try and do this without giving away too much information. So now I'm going to select a 300 point or 200 point eraser and show off how I hope that I can process the live moves. I'm just going to save it first. So the way I'm going to be hopefully doing this geopolitical is online, this live event, is that the moves will be submitted to me by geopolitical players. If I don't receive orders from geopolitical players, then what I'll do is I'm going to process the geopolitical NPCs. So each of those factions, groups, independent, whatever, I'm going to run them as if they were player characters. I'm going to run this simulator, this geopolitical game, with or without player intervention and things like that. Anyway, so I'm going to give this a go and see if I can get it to work. So I've got black beneath the map. I'm just going to randomly push, you can see the mouse, the cursor is now the eraser tool. Now I'm just going to put it somewhere, and then I'm just going to click it once, and it did nothing. Alright, undo that because I don't know what I did. I'm going to go back again, and this time I'm going to select the right layer. Alright, so clicking once. Okay, now you can see that it's now created a dot there. I'm going to zoom in on that dot. Now, the encounter could be one of these. So it's not perfect, but look, it's kind of working the way I wanted it. I'm going to reveal this encounter here. And I'm going to blacken these ones here so they're not in the view. So the idea being that I can use the eraser tool to select kind of randomly which encounter is going to be faced by the geopolitical group. So I've now concealed the neighbouring cards, and then I'm going to reveal the entirety of this one, and then I'm going to zoom in on it. Alright, so as the geopolitical moves are processed, there's going to be a movement phase, and the movement phase will sometimes trigger no opposition. Sometimes it will trigger that they've seen an encounter and they have the initiative, so they can choose to avoid it or they can choose to engage it. It's going to give like variable outcomes as to what happens. So, for example, in this case, it's an Earth Elemental Imp. Now, it's got its own serial number. So the actual creature card has its own serial number. It's got a difficulty of 38, for example. Now, as we saw before, the base modifier, or the base is 20, because there's going to be 20 individuals in the group. Then, there's going to be modifiers based on whether the party includes artisans or masters. And so if it includes artisans or masters, then it's going to give you additional bonuses. So so most of them are providing bonuses. So there's 20 plus modifiers, and in this case, it's going to be a hard fight. It's not going to be a walkover, because they've got to have 18 plus modifiers in order to take on this Earth Elemental Imp without damage, without copying it. Now, as I said, I've basically made these cards in Microsoft Excel, and I thought that I would be able to get the quality across. Now, the problem is that the settings in the file I'm using, if I basically change the resolution, then yes, I'm going to be able to make this legible. Now, I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but each of these words is an elemental power. So what I've done is I've created a base difficulty for an imp, and then I've got all the different powers that this imp has, and then I've done a calculation, and then it's assigned a difficulty based off its base, based off the combination of these plus its base difficulty. So this imp is going to be a hard fight. So let's just say that the imp is the encounter, and let's just say that it's a success. Now, where are we? All right. Say it's a success, then you basically end up having some loot. Now, it's not perfect. It's a geopolitical simulator of the game. So it's not perfect. It's not wonderful. People need to be a little bit, forgiving of it to start with. We can make modifications later. Anyway, so let's just say some loot has been generated. The elemental's been destroyed, and then the loot drop is, oops, wrong one. This one. All right, so I'm not sure what that is, but let's just expose it. So we're gonna just run around with the 20,000 silver pieces. Okay, so there's a loot drop, and we've got 20 silver piece promissory note. So that basically goes into the shared kitty, the shared loot. At the end of geopolitical, I'm making it so that so that there's a couple of different layers to it. The sponsor of the move is the first party. They're the ones who invest in the geopolitical move. So if they're going to hire mercenaries, well, the mercenaries get paid before anything happens. So they've got the starting amount that they're paid to go and do something. I should just go and find that. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Loot. Please don't use the information that you find out in this example against me. Let me find it. We've got people. Town info. Right, so town info, back to the town info. Now, on each of these cards, there's this number here. Now, these 5 people, their combined tax equals 40,000 silver pieces per year. So that's how much they pay in taxes. Now, the Lord will receive that amount. Now, if someone finds the title deed to the town of Caplice, then they also receive that much in rent. Okay, so that the Baron or the Lord, they receive the tax income on everybody in their area, and then whoever owns the place basically gets that much cash. So title deeds are really, really important in order to get cashed up. So say, for example, you want to hire these 5 individuals as mercenaries for a move. That means the sponsor would have to pay 40,000 silver pieces up front to get them as part of their mercenary group. Now, that elemental imp loot drop was 20,000 silver pieces. So, that will pull towards paying for this. However, the way it works is that for all the loot that's found, let's just say, I know, 500,000 silver pieces in loot are found during a geopolitical move, that what will happen is the sponsor of the move gets 50% of the loot. So that's 250,000 straight up. So the cost of hiring these people will be paid for out of that. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going on and rambling some more. Now, where are we? Back to town info. Get rid of that. So I'm just going to show off this a little bit. So, in the live roleplay environment, when there's encounters and there's loot to be found, the loot's going to take the form of, and sorry about the quality of it, the loot is going to take the form of item cards. So, I mean, you don't have to keep them. You can dispose of them. You can sell them. You can do all sorts of things. But if you want a costume to include a hat, you're going to need to have a hat card. No, people can't just rock up to an event without having item cards to match the costume they're wearing. So it's again a method of promoting trade and things like this. So on the card, there's things like the quality of the item, as in who made it. So this was made by an apprentice. That doesn't mean it's shit. It just means that it's it's not the best. Then the origin. So the origin is the style of the hat. So this is like a Vellini style hat. Scroll case. What we got there? Giant scorpion venom gland. So when it says quality, that's the quality of whoever harvested it. So it may be that if someone wants to make a potion from the venom, the quality of the ingredients is an apprentice quality, so it may not be as good. Elemental blue compound. Don't know what that says. Manacles, hunter's hide scraper, a female falcon. So with regards to falcons and birds, I'm making it so that some of them are quite good at taking messages, that effectively you can send it as effectively like an SMS. You can tie a little note to their leg, and they're quite good at finding a particular individual. So messages can be sent and received from birds in the Renegade campaign. So I just want to show off the cards there. Now, look, this is an older version, but what I'm trying to do is make it so that I can use the random number generator and I can create three-dimensional characters for every NPC, and I don't have to think about it. I just do it, and then when I want to activate it, that's when I will go in and maybe tweak it a little bit. So anyway, the idea being that the geopolitical card game will be the first sort of introduction to that character, and then if they get activated for over 12 months, then a little bit more information will be revealed about them in the geopolitical campaign. But if it goes into a live event, if that character is activated for a live event, then a new character sheet is going to have to be generated, and it's going to have to include a lot more information. So my intention is to make the character sheets in the form of the same sort of style as the item cards, but it will basically break it down into categories. So I've tried a couple of different things, but imagine for one moment that the number 5,000 here, that on the card over here, this said equals this cell. And so I can populate these cards to represent the character and have Microsoft Excel showing the character in this format. So little details like it's a tax that they pay, whether they're a member of the militia, or whether they've received militia training, I should say. So pretty much everybody, regardless of whether they've got a combat skill or not, is a part of the militia. This is to do with whether they have any specific skill that could be considered a militia skill. Now, what have we got here? So on the cards in the geopolitical, the primary skill is the only skill that will show up in the geopolitical. Now, the other skills are like randomly assigned. So they all, it doesn't quite show it in this screenshot, but where there's duplication, when I say I'm going to have to go in and tweak them, I will basically go in there and tweak and work out what went wrong. And then it may be that I assign, say for example, skill 2, I could make them an artisan at single-handed sword, because when I look down the list at the other skills, so skill 2, skill 3, skill 4, etc. Brawler, they're unskilled in, and that means they're training to be a brawler. Now, instead of being brawler unskilled at 20, I could make that and just click on, delete that layer there, and then make up here herbalist, master, what's that? 71. So they'd have 71 percentage points. Now, sorry, the percentages are not relevant to gameplay. I was considering whether or not they could be used for gameplay, as in by the people who are providing the service, that they can use that as a means of determining success or failure of a particular role play. But what I'm really wanting to do is make it so that people are focused on their ranks. They never say, I'm a 51% herbalist. They always refer to the actual rank that they hold. So they're an artisan herbalist, not a 51% herbalist. Anyway, so they can be, like, there's a bit of tweaking that goes on here. Now, over here we've got, like, effectively the breakdown of the character. So there's all the back end stuff, all the character's history, the character's personality, all those kind of elements. So what I've done is, it's again using RNG to determine, like, all this as a random thing. So their allegiance, they're neutral towards the Lord. So the way that they start off the game, they start off as neutral. For example, in this case, where their family's from, or their family's from Bellini. They don't worship the gods; they worship elemental air. So this individual is an elementalist. Got no phobias. Now, DeBono's hats is a psychological tool that's used. It's a very basic. It's one of the most basic sort of pigeonholing of a person's personality, but yet again, it can be used as the most rudimentary exploration of a character's personality. So by saying this is a DeBono blue, well, it means that they're a managing type of person, and they perceive endless possibility and opportunity. So they're a pretty upbeat sort of person. Anyway, so that's the basic, DeBono. But then I've broken down. I've got primary motivators, disposition, outlook, integrity, impulsiveness, boldness, agreeableness, interactivity, conformity, sense of humour, idiosyncrasies, and their most notable aspect. Again, it's an RNG determination, and it's just in order to make it easier for someone who gets given an NPC to play the role, that they can refer to these personality traits and they can play the character according to them. So some of them are a bit contradictory. Some of them it's not perfect, but it's much better than nothing. Then there's things like crimes. Now, you can see that it's not quite right. Never committed a crime against a stranger. Well, that's contradictory. The calculation I've used when it's got victim, if it should be that that cell is going and asking that cell, do you include never? And if it includes never in this cell, then maybe this one needs to be blank. So look, I've mucked around with all the different calculations, and some of them aren't quite right. Anyway, so parents, there's timber deeds. Now, a few timber deeds. It's an old, back. I've been developing this for a long time, and the concept of giving people access to timber deeds, well, no. I mean, I'm going to have gold mine deeds and deeds to ruins and deeds to all sorts of things, but the actual natural resources of a province, I'm going to make it so that that's completely outside of both the geopolitical and the LARP. The thing is that if I allow people to have timber deeds, then some people are just going to harvest it and cut down huge tracts of forest in the game, and that means that all the maps will then be out of date. But also, I'm just wanting to try and make it so that this is the way that people treat the environment in Rowstead is a little bit more sustainable. Anyway, blah blah blah. The character's grandparents are dead, unknown cause. Siblings alive and well. A few grazing deeds. Again with the grazing deeds, I just think it's unnecessary and it's a bit of a complication. So there's a few things that need to be worked on. And look, this is just an example. I just wanted to show it off and explain how NPCs can be stored. Their details can be stored in that way. So yeah, look, there's little things I can show you that don't interfere too much. Where are we? Okay, so for example, this one here is a village. So I'm just going to zoom in on the village. Oops, too much zooming in. All right, so this is a village map. So again, when I said before about how I've got an RNG to determine the hit points of things, well, you can see that, well, okay, why have I got two doors there? But anyway, the thing is that might say that there's 50 hit points worth of damage to break this door down. You might have noticed before that the moat on that ruin had some dots. Now that might say that it's an RNG, I don't know, between 2 and 10. So the depth of the moat is part of the game. So this is all LRP. This is not something that really applies to the geopolitical. But the main thing is that it shows the amount of detail that I've gone into with regards to creating all this. That when someone's wanting to breach the walls of this town, that if they find someone who's going to be providing them the service of running the content for them, and they want to try and breach through here, that they might go into the moat. They may actually inspect the stonework. They may actually determine that the that the stonework is weak at this location. They may try excavating through. Now, if this is unoccupied, in fact, if there's nobody living in any of these towns around, any of these buildings around here, they might be able to work without being heard for quite a long time if nobody's patrolling the walls. Anyway, just an example. So I've got things like this. This is a Samurai style village. Samurai style village. This one here is a Caesar 2 style village. Same sort of format. The NPCs can be allocated to live in some of these places. So we've got Chakrapop, Imperial style, and then we've got the Daquin style. What have we got here? Hamlet. Why did my hamlet? Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is the hamlet, which is smaller than the village, and you can see that again, the thickness of the walls, the depth of the moat. These are variables that, as I was saying before, all I have to do is copy and then select all and then copy and then paste values only. And what that will do, it will strip out the calculation and then leave us with nothing but the hit point value. Now, I haven't done that. Haven't done this with the villages, but I have done it with hamlets in this particular case, which is I've got the subterranean levels on this one, and I've also got things like sewers, granaries, cisterns, and the central keep beneath that is where the crypt is. And then it goes down another layer. So these are all subterranean, and so when it comes to taking back from the undead, you need to not only deal with the surface, but you also need to deal with the subsurface in order to pacify it and take it back. Anyways, I'm going to try one more thing, which is to expose the undead layer. Alright, so again, clicking on the map, clicking on the black background, zooming in, and then I'm going to erase this as an encounter card. Now, there's a big difference between the encounters in the field and the encounters in a town or a village. So I'm making it so that, like if you're trying to take a town back from the undead, that you face off against multiple. You have to process them multiple times. So anyway, you've got the difficulty at 36. And then you've got these little categories, or these little squares. So this particular encounter is going to be encountered 8 times before it drops loot. And then 8 times before it drops loot, 8 times before it drops loot. And then that card can be removed from the assault. So when you're assaulting a town that's undead infested, that you're going to have to process through these kind of encounters until you've kind of obliterated, and then the other thing is harvesting the skeletal remains. I should go a little bit into detail about that, but just briefly, what I've decided is that with the War of the Gods, that the goddess of death, when she fell in the War of the Gods, what it did was it resulted in a curse. Now, up until that point, when people would bury their dead, they would bury them with respect. They'd show respect for the dead. There'd be a bit of a ceremony, a little bit of care given to the ceremony. since the death of the goddess of death, in the War of the Gods, people haven't been treating the dead with as much respect. So the result is that if any creature, any sentient creature dies, and isn't buried, then it will rise, it will rot away to skeletal remains, and then it will effectively kind of mindlessly go through its, it kind of mindlessly goes through its last day. It might travel, it might move around, it might do lots of things, but if it encounters another living sentient creature, then it will basically try to grapple it, and it will try to take it back to where it died. And if that person, if it's just a one-on-one, and you follow, like if you smash the skeletal remains of an undead, if you smash it and then you bury those remains with respect, that will break the curse for that particular skeletal remains, as long as the remains are not disturbed. So yes, it's possible to bury them in the field, but it's not necessarily going to stop them from being disturbed, and then they'll rise again. So the right way to do it is to take those remains and then bury them in a crypt. Now, in the crypt, it means that it's easier to guard them, less likely for them to be desecrated, and less likely for them to rise again. So that's that. I can see that we've been going for an hour and a half. Now, I've covered quite a bit in this. There's still so much to cover, and really, I don't know whether or not I'm rambling or whether or not I've been, explaining properly. But the main thing is that we've got a website, Renegade. RenegadeLARP.com, where pretty much there'll be lots of information that's available to people to have a look at, and I'm going to use that as being one of the primary methods of communication and passing information on. So yeah, check it out. See what you think. Look, thanks for being, hanging around for the duration. But I didn't want to process the moves because I really want to try doing the tournament with some live, with some people providing me with the orders for their geopolitical forces, and then I'll process through those moves accordingly. So that's what I'd like to do, and hopefully it works out. So anyway, I'm going to close this down and see how it goes. All right, bye.